Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's quite of an accomplishment. 18 years, my goodness. And although this meeting in particular is one that, at times we have not had a lot of people present in person, I think the spirituality has different measures of success than we do. And I think the fact that we are here persisting in this work is one of the measures of success, perseverance. And I am so happy to be here talking about this topic because I feel that, I have grown so much in those 18 years, and I know many of you probably feel the same way if you have been here with us on the day-to-day of our spiritual center. I can say for sure that the center has grown. And sometimes the way people look at the growth of a spiritual center is how many more meetings do you have? How many more people do you have? And here I can say that we look at the quality of our living. For the people who are here, the level of awareness, the level of change, the peace that we have, the strength of our faith, this is really the true measures of the work that we do every day. And I am super confident that we have done a decent job within our limitations, naturally within, our humanity. We have a very deep and honest commitment towards self-knowledge, towards emotional honesty, towards, taking the level of study and understanding of spirituality to a new level, which means embracing the science, embracing, the progress of spiritism, because spiritism is an evolving body of knowledge. It is a philosophy that invites us to continuously think and reflect. It's not something that it was delivered to us finished and for us to swallow. Rather, a philosophy that was delivered to us with the intent that we would continue to think, that we would continue to ask questions and seek for answers. So today's presentation, I think it is the outcome of a deepening in the understanding of inner transformation, moral transformation. It is the first of a number of lectures that I don't know how many yet, but I am working on the third one of this series, but I think there will be 4 or 5. So this first one, we're gonna go back to the basics, and we're gonna look at, the idea is to look at moral transformation from a very different perspective than the perspective the religions have presented to us, and that we have understood in Spiritism included. Behind this thinking is the work of Joanna de Angelis, particularly the book In Search of Truth, which has not been translated yet, that presents an entire new perspective. If you read and you really read and study, you're going to see that Joanna presents something a very different look at the work of Allan Kardec. Mm-hmm. And that's the basis of our study. So we are today presenting Kardec under the eyes of Joanna de Angelis. So the first part is we're going to go back to the basics, and we're going to review the concepts of good and evil and selfishness. Starting with this very first question, and if you have heard me, we have mentioned it so many times, and the reason why we bring it back is because maybe by the end of today, maybe by the end of the second lecture, I am going to show you that although we talk about it, we reflect about it, we still don't understand what it means, and we don't apply it properly in our lives. So Kardec asked the spirits, what is the most effective means for improving ourselves in this life and for resisting the draw of evil? A lot of times when we look at this question and we think that the answer is to know yourself, is to identify what we call the evil. However, that is really not the purpose, because Kardec had already identified the evil. So when we talk about inner transformation and we talk about this question, we are thinking that the answer, know thyself, is so that we can know that within us there is darkness. But when Kardec asked the question, he already knew that. That's why he asked the question. So he was coming from a point where I understand that in our humanity it is marked by the presence of this darkness, evil that prevails. And so what is the most effective means for improving? So it's not to identify, because he had already identified. So that's the first thing I want to point out to you. And a lot of times our emphasis, and I have said this and I'm bringing this back, remains on effort, changing behavior. I need to be humble, I need to be virtuous, I need to be charitable, I need to study, I need to engage myself in energy healing, when the answer was none of that, right? So the way for us to most effective to improve and to resist the draw of evil is self-knowledge. Now, the question is, how can self-knowledge transform a person? So we have been talking about this. Biga has her workshops on Saturdays once a month. Many of our lectures touch on that. But if I would ask any person who goes to the virtuous workshops, or or if you were someone comes to you and say, hey, I know you studied this in Spiritism, so explain to me, how is it exactly that self-knowledge transforms a person? So would we have the answer? Would we know what to say, right? So the purpose of this lecture, the coming lecture, will be to help us to answer this question. So if I have a case here where I have someone comes to the Spiritist Center who is very angry with the husband, it could be the wife, and wish to divorce and also wish to be a better person. The person is confused about what she or he feels, or unsure if loves him or her, if the marriage is the best solution. I mean, that is a very common case. We run into things like that. It happens. So let's say it's here in the Spiritist Center, or maybe outside, someone who approaches you with the knowledge that you have. What would you say to this person, right? How would you orient this person? So here are some of the options that usually are very often seen. Okay, breathe, pray, meditate, fill your mouth with water so that you don't curse or don't yell or whatever. Control your voice, try not to speak so loud, right? Read the gospel, do the gospel at home, come to the center to receive passes, try to forgive. I'll put your name in our prayer and obsession group. Provide recommendations to whether the person should stay or leave the marriage. We see all that, right? All that done in the Spiritist Center, in the fraternal counseling. And I'm not saying that this is totally wrong per se, but if we're trying to help someone, right, who has the answer is the person, it's not us. And the answer is based on what the spirits have said. He or she needs to know himself. So the guidance should be in this direction, but very often that's not what we do, because we tend to want to solve someone's problems and take the merit over. We feel so good when we can actually provide people with solutions instead of helping them to find the solution themselves. Now, we're going to start from the beginning, and this is something that Kardec brings in the introduction of the Spirit's book. He says that Spiritism is a science of infinite, meaning unlimited, right? We can study it forever. And the better way to study it is building blocks. You need to really, really understand the basic ideas and then build from those ideas. So I like the idea of the building blocks and the chain. So we're going to be adding links gradually as we go through the lecture today and the upcoming lectures, to come up with the final idea of how self-knowledge actually helps someone to transform him or herself. So we're going to start with the idea of good and evil as it is found in Genesis, chapter 3, item 8. It says one could say that evil is the absence of good, the same as cold is the absence of heat. Thus, where good does not exist, evil necessarily does. But since humans have the cause of evil within themselves, and at the same time have their free will and the divine laws as guide, they could avoid evil whenever they wished. So, for the second sentence, I just want to highlight that, so evil is within, and that is a concept that sometimes is hard for us to understand, because you may think of yourself as a good person. I'm good. I'm not killing anyone. I try to be good every single day. I help people, right? I'm a good friend. But spiritually speaking, evil is defined by this self-centeredness that characterizes our humanity. And when you are so self-centered, you are unable to see the other. So self-centeredness and selfishness is the antagonism of charity and fraternity. So in charity and fraternity, we'll get to that, is defined as this state of loving someone where you love for the sake of loving. There is no gain. There's no primary, secondary, tertiary gain other than the well-being and the satisfaction and the fulfillment of being loved and giving love. So so that's how we need to think this idea of evil. I have a good friend here in the center who has a very difficult time thinking that we are people where evil prevails over goodness. And part of the difficulty is to understand the concept of evil as presented by the spirits. But what I really want to focus on is this idea of good and evil. So the spirits bring this very good analogy that they say that, you have cold. Cold is a state that only exists because you don't have heat, right? So if you heat it up, then if heat is present, cold would disappear. That's the same idea with good and evil. So good is what exists. Now, when we look at the shadow here, right, this is what we would call evil, based on the comparison, the analogy that the spirits bring to us. So a lot of times what we do, what we focus is on combating evil. So religions and spiritism tell us we have to be good. Okay, so if you have to be good, then the next step is let me eliminate evil. But according to the spirits, to Allan Kardec in Genesis, evil does not exist. So if you want to combat evil, what would you do to eliminate that shadow? Would you rub the shadow, step on the shadow, fight the shadow? None of that is going to get rid of that shadow because it's not real. It does not really exist. It has a relative existence, not an absolute existence. So what happens is you have, for example, anger and envy. So the Spirit says that we shouldn't be angry. Anger is bad for you, and it's there in the gospel and everywhere you can find that we should make an effort to be good. So our emphasis is, okay, let me control my anger. I will not be angry anymore. So I will not dress, we're going to put expensive stuff. I'm going to dress very humbly. I am not going to accept invitations to speak in congresses anymore because, God forbid, my envy. I'll stop. I'm just going to speak at Conscious Living for 10 people so that I protect myself from my envy. But we are putting all our effort to eliminate symptoms. Symptoms, they're being generated by something else. So the point is we are missing the root. We're missing the real problem. Mm-hmm. So according to the spirits, the real problem is selfishness. Selfishness that is described as someone who is concerned only with their own interest or well-being. And so we are going to put together some key elements. Key elements that are important for us to understand the whole concept of moral transformation. The first one is the understanding of selfishness. So let's read again this question and this answer. Among all the vices, which may we regard as the root? We have already told you many times, selfishness. All evil derives from it. All of them. Study all the vices and you will see that selfishness is at the bottom of them all. As much as you struggle against them, you will never uproot them as long as you have not destroyed their cause. Let all your efforts tend towards that end, because selfishness is the true scourge of society. Those in this life who want to approach moral perfection must uproot from their heart every sentiment of selfishness, for selfishness is incompatible with justice, love, and charity. It neutralizes all other qualities. We have read these. Many of you have knowledge of this question and this answer, but we have yet to understand what it truly means and to reflect more deeply into it. We should think about this question every day. First of all evil derives from it. So when we think about evil, right, what would you say is evil in our world? Impatience, ingratitude, envy, hate, hostility, resentment, all those things. And there's a long list, right, that we would call evil. Well, at the root of all of them, no matter what it is, according to the spirits, is selfishness. Meaning, it's an ego that has become ill. It's an ego that is self-centered, okay? And what the spirits are telling us is that you can fight all those symptoms, and you can change your behavior. But if you have not done that by going to the root, think about it. Anyone who deals with plants, you are weeding. If you pull the plant, but you leave the root, you have the impression that you clean it, but you know that you haven't, because that's going to come back. Mm-hmm. Another time, another season, in another way. So as long as we are unable to connect our behavior and what we call evil to the root of the problem, according to the spirits, we are wasting our time. It's not being done. What that means is, for anything and everything that we do on a daily basis, we need to ask ourselves, what is the role that my ego is playing in this situation? From the very mundane things to the more serious crises that we go through. And more, which is really disturbing in this answer, is when the Spirit says that selfishness neutralizes all other qualities. Why? So you say, I'm being charitable. I'm giving all these things. Oh, look how good I am, right? But if there is a secondary gain behind that charity, which is, for example, you like yourself when you do those things. That is the primary thing. When I am being the charitable, I like that version of myself. That is a gain. Because when you are already connected with your value as a human being, you have no doubt of your wholesome, of your divinity, which none of us has, right? Then you can give, and you don't really gain anything. That's not really doing anything. The one who wants to be good is the ego. The self is in peace with who he or she is, and is present on each moment, and it is connected with the fact that we are immortal beings. It's connected with the fact that God made us this way, that actually the growth process is divine in itself. There is no anxiety, there is no guilt in being human, but the ego cannot stand being human, so the ego needs to be good every day. The self just needs to be. Not good, not bad, just be. Be with whatever it is, because all that is divine. even the darkness is divine in some way because it's part of the process. So the self sits with that and works to integrate, works to understand, works to embrace itself. So, makes no mistakes, right? So it's not that we are not improving. It's not that those things don't have value, but we cannot fool ourselves to think that we are virtuous because we are doing something. Because in our stage of evolution, we are still in very much in a bargaining mode with God, with our spiritual situation, wanting to be better, wanting to be astral city, or So we do with very specific goals in mind. Now, what is the moral transformation paradigm of religions, spiritism included? That you want to be virtuous. So you want to be virtuous in this lifetime, right? So although we are immortalists, our perspective is very much of one lifetime. And some of the gains, for some people, they want to be in heaven. Some of us, astral city, no solar, will be socially accepted. You gain status. People see you as good. You feel good about yourself, right? Like I said, I love my version of like a charitable person. You feel worth of love and belonging, and you shield yourself from criticism, from your own humanity, and from pain. So those are all secondary gains. And the drive, what drives us to want to be good today. Now, in question 895, Kardec asked, besides the defects and vices about which no one can be mistaken, what is the most characteristic sign of imperfection? It's self-interest. Moral qualities many times do not stand up when put to test, like copper gliding that cannot withstand the test of the touchstone. True disinterestedness is in fact so rare on earth that it may be admired as a phenomenon when it displays itself. So it's just another key element that helps us to make the case for where we stand as a humanity. That we are driven by self-interest, and that selfishness, that the root is the root of all the evils that we see. So we need to be asking ourselves, what is my interest when I do this? What it is, or where it is, or what do I gain with my behavior? And this is not gonna stop you from doing what you're doing. If you are doing charity, you go ahead and do whatever you need to do. But do from a place of awareness, from a place of understanding. Don't fool yourself, oh, look how wonderful I am. No, I am wonderful as a divine being. I am doing what I can. I understand that I still need this for my own self, in some ways. But this is the beginning. This is what we have for today. So we do that. The point of this center and what we're doing here is that not that we are going to live here transformed, but we're going to live here aware. Mm-hmm. The difference between worlds of trials and expiations and regeneration, in regeneration there is still evil, lots of evil. But what is making the transition is not that we are necessarily being transformed. It is that before we did evil without awareness, and now we do evil with awareness. Mm-hmm. That is the difference. That's what's putting us on the regeneration, training towards regeneration, because that is the first step. And self-knowledge is what transforms us, according to the Spirit. So that's the transition right there. So we need to ask those things. We need to ask, where is our ego? So I'll give you a very simple example. Like I said, we need to be doing these reflections, whether it is a major crisis in our life or something super simple. So yesterday, I was at the dance competition with my daughter, right? And, it's something that it's very important for her. It's very important for us because of some of the struggles that she has had. And now she's so proud of it. It was such an accomplishment and something so beautiful. And I'm naturally recording and posting and blah, blah, blah. And then at some point she looks at one of my postings and says, delete this because I didn't give you permission to put that on. And I was pissed. I thought, I pay for all of these things, a lot of money, by the way, okay? And I take you to dance class every single Tuesday and Thursday myself, right? And now you're telling me that I cannot post this particular dance, right? So I was so angry that I said, okay, I'm not gonna record anymore. I put my phone away and I was very mad. And then later on, I'm thinking about it. Here I am at the center, right? I wanted, it's my thing. It's not so much that I was thinking about it, because a lot of times parents will project the image of their children because it makes them feel so good. And I didn't feel that was necessary. I was truly coming from a place of celebration because of all that went into that. And it was so beautiful. And then friends were asking to see and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, she felt exposed because she knows that that presentation was good but was not perfect. She didn't want that to be exposed, and that's where I need to leave the center and open room for her. So this is where, and so it's not that suddenly I became enlightened. It's that the awareness displaced my ego and gave room for her to be, for the respect. I didn't look there. I wasn't in an effort to be good. Let me try not to be angry. I didn't need to do that because the ego would do that. What I did without getting in touch with the root. So I could say, because I read that I shouldn't be angry, that's not good. Let me not do that. And change my behavior, change my outside without getting in touch with the root of the problem. The root of the problem is I want what I want. There is a queen inside me that wants what she wants at the time that she wants and the way that she wants. We all have in ourselves a king and a queen.
God save the queen.
But that's the beginning of moral transformation. That does not come from a conscious wanting to be something, but know yourself and get to the root of the problem. So the focus has been in changing behavior. So if you want to be patient and make an effort to remain calm, if you want to be charitable, you make an effort to give, or humble, to not be proud, show humility. And so basically what we do is, instead of tackling the selfishness, we get a flashlight and we eliminate the shadow with the flashlight. So, but the flashlight runs on battery, and eventually it will end. And the behavior is going to surface again because it was never truly dealt with. I love this analogy. I thought it was very good.
This is all since you hold it now, right?
Yes, yes. I know, right? It would be like, you need many flashlights, right? So what is the concept of moral transformation found in Kardec's codification, and what is the path for moral transformation appointed by the higher spirits? With a flashlight, obviously the problem was not uprooted because the problem is selfishness that does not consider the other, has an exclusive concern with oneself, personal interest, gain, and centeredness. So again, if we think about evil, I just put a little list of some of the symptoms, and that's what we need to remember, that those are all symptoms. And again, going back to Kardec, you will never uproot them as long as you don't destroy their cause. So we need to be going back to the cause. All right, so again, in an argument, you would ask yourself, where is my selfishness in this argument, right? In anger, in resentment, in irritation, in criticism. The question is not whether you are selfish or not. The question is, where is the selfishness? Where is the ill ego? Where is the wounded child? Where are my inner needs that are actually generating those symptoms? So here's some examples. You can think about envy. So envy happens when someone has more than I do. So usually criticism is a great tool to diminish others. I thought of someone who, for example, is very authentic. Someone that sometimes, that person is loud, but the person is like very comfortable with him or herself and very alive. And if you are uncomfortable with yourself, you're going to find many ways to put that person down. Look at how he or she behaves. Look at how loud he or she is, or whatever. And we do that because we ourselves are uncomfortable. We would like, it's envy, because we would like to be able to have that freedom. We would like to be able to have that spontaneity, but we can't. And because we can't, we envy the other person. But because envy is a very difficult feeling to have and to recognize, you don't say it's anger. You give it another name, you call it criticism, you call it whatever. You find means to justify your hostility because it's hostile, right? Judgment is you do because the other does not know, and you are the reference for the truth. So there's a righteousness, I am right, I own the truth. So again, you are at the center when you judge. And often, very often, you think of yourself as being higher and more than you actually are. Resentfulness comes from not believing that someone did this to me. So again, you are at the center. Impatience is my time, my way. And so it's usually shown as arrogance and superiority. Lack of faith, you're the center of the universe, not God. Conflicts and wars is when you are the reference and you know how the other person should live. You are that much. And so not only you want to dictate your own living, but you want to dictate how other lives as well. A materialist perspective concerned with how others will see me. There's an over-identification with the material, so insecurity, inadequacy, anxiety can come from that. And then all kinds of addictions, inability to handle the void, to accept life, to be in control of things. And so you seek ways to numb yourself or withdraw from life. And so these are just like different examples or situations where we can look at these circumstances and help us to think, how is it that my selfishness, how is it that my centeredness is in the gist of the situations? And the spirits are going to tell us that selfishness is found upon the importance of the personality. So we and you read the gospel, you read the Spirit's book, you see that repeated so many times. And we spiritists, especially the ones who are workers, who have been in spiritism for a long time, who are speakers and yada yada, we do this because we are convinced that we can help others to be better. We have a mission. We're missionaries. We are here doing this because people need us, right? And when we read those things and prepare those lectures, we should always be thinking, my goodness, the spirits are telling that we've found ourselves to be so important, so above where we are. Let me think in which ways I am this, because they wrote to you, me, not for the people who are out there. So as we read and as we study, we need to shift from this way. I am here to help this poor humanity. You are here to help yourself. You are the pure humanity. You are the one who thinks you are so much more than everyone else. You are the one who, have illusions about your own place in the universe. So when we look at these things, betrayal, ingratitude, and gossip, a lot of times we are so hurt because when we are the recipients of these things, we react from a place of superiority. And we judge the other, we condemn the other as if we were absolutely 100% incapable of those things ourselves. So if someone speaks bad about you and you find out that that was the case, would you be deeply hurt? Probably. Why? Why? Are you that good that people have nothing bad to say about you? Are you that perfect, that superior, that you think no one actually is able to see your flaws and your limitations? And more important, are you someone who never speaks bad about others? So, if you go back to what Kardec is saying, the importance of the personality, this place, of this high place that we put ourselves, these judges of others' lives. So when we know ourselves, when we know our place in this universe, which is a place of divinity, yes, but we are spirits according to the spirits in the gospel, according to the spirits, we barely left primitivism. We have done an incredible advance intellectually, but morally, we are so instinctive, so reactive, so frail, so disconnected. And so we are so capable of all those things. So capable. So if we would know that, not intellectually, but know that emotionally in our guts, without feeling devaluated by our own humanity, then if someone talks bad about me, I would say, maybe, I'm sure he has reasons to be talking bad about me. You know, I have plenty, right? I may choose not to do that myself, make an effort, which I'll be taming my tendencies. That's not transformation. We're going to talk about that. There's a huge difference between taming your tendencies and transformation, two very different things. I may choose not to do that because I want to be civilized and I want not to harm, but it doesn't mean that the desire to diminish the other is absent within me, right? So that's a difference that we need to understand. So when we are conscious of our place and we are in peace with our humanity, understanding that it's all okay, then we can do something important. We can go down the steps and meet the other person, eye to an eye, and say, I understand you because I am just as capable of doing the things that you know. So instead of judging and forgiving you, I can empathize with you. You know, and life becomes so much lighter and so much easier and so much less suffering because this place of superiority brings another layer of suffering to our already painful living. So let's look at the consequences. So if you change without uprooting evil, that evil is going to manifest elsewhere unexpectedly. And if it doesn't, then it manifests inwards. Whatever we don't, so I have this anger, I have this guilt, I have this pain. If I tame it, if I say I'm not going to manifest that anymore, but I do not look at the root, I don't go inwards, then it's gonna, a lot of times it doesn't manifest outwards, but explode inwards. And now you are developing autoimmune disorders, you're developing migraines, you develop panicking, reflux, all kinds of things. That is your psychic attacking your own self because you were unable to actually connect with the root of the problem. And hence all the somatic things that we all deal with as a humanity. In Search of the Truth, Joana de Angelis says, consider the existence of the shadow as a moral issue, not hiding it through sacrifices, self-abuse, or self-flagellation to overcome what has been labeled as temptations because such behaviors are inherent to it, are inherent to the shadow. When suppressed for some time, one day it bursts forth in the form of disenchantment or vulgarity, as it does for all those who for a long time prevented it from manifesting, falsely believing they have triumphed over it. So many, this book, I am studying it like I'm doing it's deep, And so she's saying, don't fool yourself, don't change your behavior and believe that things have been transformed. It's not from the outside, it needs to come from inwards. Falsely believing they have triumphed over it. Socially, what this means to all of us is what we also find in question 917, the shock that humans experience from selfishness of others that usually makes them selfish in turn because they feel the need to put themselves on the defensive. Seeing that others think only of themselves and not of them, they are in turn led to concern about themselves more than about others. So this is the cycle, right? So Fatima is selfish towards me, so she didn't pay attention to me, she didn't look at me, she talked bad about me. Why should I look at her or be nice to her or give it to her? So this is the cycle that we live in. People are disregarding me, people don't care about me. Why should I care about them? But the question is, when are we going to break the cycle? When are we going to be the ones, right? Because this is why we have some wars in the world that look like they will never end, because someone needs to be willing to break the cycle. Break the cycle to love, self-love. Because once you are connected to self-love, once you are connected to God within, then you are no longer vulnerable to all these pains, to all this evil. So we need to be committed to do the work, and we need to be committed to be the ones. Sometimes it's not a true transformation yet, but it can be an exercise, and it's valid as well, to say, I want to ignore that person, I want to turn my back, but I will not do that. I know that inside me, this is what I want, but again, it's all about the consciousness. So I know that the darkness remains within me. I'm going to choose to act differently than what my inner self is asking at the moment, because this is the beginning. This is the beginning of the process. It is to this antagonism between charity and selfishness, it is to the invasion of the human heart by this leprosy that Christianity owes the fact that it has not completed its entire mission. And it won't for a long time. It won't, because again, the overcoming of selfishness. So we're thinking now about more the social extension of this issue. First we were talking more individually, now we're looking more at a societal level. We're going to live in a society with a lot of problems, with a lot of darkness, with a lot of difficulties, because whether it's an election or not, because whether it's a day-to-day, when we are making choices, we are making choices for what is best for me. Mm-hmm. What will work best for me. And we don't really have a sense of fraternity, of putting our perspective to what we think is really, really going to be the best, even if it hurts me, even if it hurts my self-interest. Another day I was talking to a friend and he said, this candidate would really benefit me financially, but this candidate looks like he will do a lot more for the people, and therefore I'm gonna go with this one, although financially it will have an implication to me. So this is just an example, but this is in our day-to-day, in everything that we do. So to close this first part, what is the contribution of Spiritism? How can Spiritism help? It helps by identifying selfishness as the root of all evil. So it gives us a starting point. That's the first link for us to consider and to think. Fights materialism. Materialism nourishes selfishness. So when I for example, think that someone belongs to me, right? From a materialistic perspective, my husband, my wife, my children, right? So that will create jealousy, it will create a level of attachment, will create evil, and nourishes these attachment to things, like it's one example. So these are the two ways, important ways in which Spiritism contributes to, for all of us to overcome this problem. And it does so by giving us a higher point of view, a more evolved point of view that spirits enable you to see things from such an evolved point of view that the sense of personality somehow disappears before the doctrine's immensity. So it helps us to actually understand our true place. It tells us that we are children of God, so it tells us about our essence, our self, our worth. So it guides us in this direction. It tells us about a God that's not out there, but it's in us, every single cell of our bodies. Every single aspect of our being is divine. It helps us because it tells us our place in evolution. So we are still in a condition where evil prevails in our world, and we know what the root is, and will provide a solution because it tells us about progress. It tells us about reincarnation. So we need to understand, it puts evolution into a perspective where we shift from this idea that I need to be good today to the idea that goodness and enlightenment is going to happen over the course of many lives. It does that by telling us many places in the codification that this lifetime is equivalent to 1 minute, 1 second, or 1 day in eternity. And I ask, what is it that you do in 1 day on the perspective of a lifetime? Even if it's the busiest of the days, it's nothing. You do nothing. You do very little. If you think of, you live 100 years, what did you do? What you accomplished in 1 day? This is how we need to think about our incarnation. So think about, in the religious movement, for sure in the Spiritist movement, the level of guilt and anxiety that we experience each day with this idea that we have to be good. Because we take that and we think that we need to be good today, in this lifetime. And we forget that that's not what the codification is saying. That's not what we have learned. We have learned of who we are. We have learned of where we are, what characterizes our humanity. We have learned that the progress, that reincarnation, it's a slow process. And we have our destiny, we have our aim, we have our hope that holds us together each and every single day, so we can move forward peacefully, calmly, without beating ourselves, without being so anxious, without being so hostile towards ourselves. Because one of the biggest problems that we have is that we set for ourselves expectations that cannot be met. They are completely unrealistic. They are delusional. Delusional. There would be a psychiatric diagnosis for each one of us when we deviate and we expect ourselves levels of behavior and virtue that are absolutely incompatible with our place in evolution and what can be done on a lifetime. So when we understand all of those things, not cognitively, in the next lecture we're going to talk about different paths for moral transformation, intellectual by the book, or the one that truly transforms. We're going to look at more education, as Kardec have taught us. But what happens when you are able to find your place, your real place, is that there is this displacement. So this is, you think of these as a thick, dry layer of the ego, right? The moment that you feel who you are, then opens a little crack in that ego, and a little room for the self to be and for connection to take place. So first hint of how self-knowledge leads to inner transformation. Self-knowledge, the understanding of who you are and where you are, allows your ego to step down and allows you to actually find your center and opens these cracks on the ego. There is a little displacement. You leave the center so somebody else can be with you and you can now connect, because the whole thing is about connection with yourself, with the other, and then with God. And then you will manifest the first manifestations, the first flowers of this work, which is a work of humbleness, right? So you don't choose to be humble. Humbleness is not something that will be given to you. You cannot choose to be humble. The ego wants to be humble. It is when you go inwards, when you actually understand your limitations, you understand your darkness, and you do this inner movement of stepping down from this higher place that you have put yourself, that it will open a crack. Your defenses are going to come down, and the humbleness and the first flowers and the first fruits will manifest, not because you wanted to do something, but because you chose to embrace who you are. That is the difference. We need to stop wanting to be something else. We need to start wanting to be who we are. Embrace that, because it is the embracement. It is this acceptance, this understanding that will allow the displacement of our ego and the connection, true connection, real connection. Then when this happens and you connect with your brother and sister, you breathe. Then you breathe peace. But you didn't choose to breathe to get peaceful. You got peaceful and now you breathe. So is the outcome. Of course, and again, I'm not saying, okay, don't do your breathing. All those things can happen, you to connect with your inner world. But a lot of times people think that inner transformation is because you breathe and you calm down. No. You are changing your behavior, you are regulating yourself. But the true inner transformation is when you breathe, because you actually have made peace with who you are, and that allow space in yourself for God to take center. And when God takes center, everybody else occupies the center next to you and with you. Okay? If you want to learn more, we'll be on the second lecture, which is about more education. I hope this gives us food for thought, and it's giving me a lot of food for thought. I am definitely thinking of myself, and that has become a daily exercise to look at selfishness from this perspective. And let's go for 18 more years. Let's see where we will be 18 more years from now. Hopefully a little bit better, a little bit more transforming, with many cracks and many flowers coming out from this dry piece of land. That's our souls.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.